So this is our utility adjuvants podcast. It's winter. It's cold outside in much of the country. You know, it's not really a super exciting topic to discuss, but it's things that need to be discussed, and some of these things people may not be aware of. So what better time than January to kick off with the utility adjuvants? So adjuvants can affect a tank mixture in one of two ways, either directly or indirectly. And the direct method of affecting your spray is coverage and penetration. These are known as activator adjuvants. These are going to directly affect your spray and how well it's working, how well the pesticide is going to work. You've got utility adjuvants that work indirectly, and this is stuff like drift, spray drift, as well as water quality, including pH and hardness. So those are the two different types of adjuvants. And I think, so we're going to be discussing the utility adjuvants today. These are things like drift and deposition agents. You've got anti-foam, pH, water hardness. What else am I missing here? Maybe some compatibility agents and stuff like that.
Well, and one of the things that after we talked yesterday and we were putting this together that I thought about was even dye, even tank dye, spray indicator is a utility adjuvant. So that we can go out and make applications and know what we sprayed. I think that's really important. It's something that many of the government agencies that I work with utilize spray dye indicators, and I think that fits into the utility adjuvants as well. And when you look at those two categories, the ones that directly affect the spray performance, those are the ones that people most fixate on in our industry. And they want to get better coverage. They want to get a penetrant. They want to get the herbicides or the other systemic products down into the plant. But these other products are just as important. And really, when you look at a lot of the data that we've done and the studies that we've done, you find that they're the ones that have just as much effect on the overall performance as those direct common 9-on-9 surfactants, your organosilica products, your MSO type of adjuvants that we have in our industry. So the first one we want to talk about, I think, Kevin, we're going to talk about drift reduction products. And you want to give a little bit of a background on why we have so much data here at Heritage PPG and how we really structured that part of our proprietary line.
Yeah, and aside from it, being the one that we have the most data on, it's the most fun to talk about, especially when you get into how you can sell the product and have conversations with your customers regarding drift control. So when we were Winfield United PPG, we had our innovation center in River Falls, Wisconsin. They have wind tunnels that can measure the amount of spray droplets. They can measure the size of each individual droplet. They can adjust everything about the spray, from the type of nozzle that's being used, the amount of wind that they're blowing through the tunnel. They can adjust all the pesticide and the use rates of each pesticide. So they've got a whole lot of data about all different types of drift reduction products. And so there's a lot of them out there on the market. You've got the polymers, you've got emulsions, invert emulsions, oil emulsions, and a lot of these have benefits, but they're all different, and some of them have issues. And we know that there are issues because of these wind tunnels and all the field testing and lab testing that we have done with these products. We get to carry over one of these products, and it's called Droplex.
I think that we're going to add to the presentation. You've got a really nice chart that talks about these different categories, different products that are out on the market, the pros, the cons, the benefits. And ultimately, we find that a product that's an oil emulsion product like Droplex really is the best type of product that's out there. I think one of the other things that we found with some of that information that we've gotten from the research facility is that Droplex specifically hits that droplet size of about 300 to 350 microns, which through all the data and the collection that they've done, they find that that's kind of the sweet spot for the size of the droplet. So when you look at other products that are out there, a lot of times, like especially the polymer-based products, you'll see that they get a great big droplet. A lot of the data that we have shows 650 microns, which another thing we found with all this testing that we've done is that's the size droplet that bounces off the leaf. Well, if we spray at a droplet size that bounces off our leaf, doesn't stay on contact with the leaf surface. We can't translocate those, whether it's a herbicide, insecticide, fungicide, doesn't really matter. We can't get the material into the plant if we can't keep it on the leaf. So again, really good data, and that's something that we're going to add to the presentation. I think it's really important to look at the fact that they are not all the same. There's a lot of different deposition and drift agents out there, but they're not all the same. So
yeah, one of the problems with the polymers is it, like you said, it's a thickening, so it's going to increase the size of the droplet, which does help reduce drift overall, because if you have a heavier droplet, no matter how high your boom is above the ground or what the wind speed is that you're spraying in, it's not going to drift as far as a smaller droplet. So you're reducing the amount of fines with those polymers, but you're also not getting the product onto the foliage because it just hits and bounces off and you end up on the ground. That's where we have some difference with Droplex. It has that ideal size range of droplet size, that 250, 300, 350 micron. And we know this because of the laser beams that we've tested it through. We can measure the size of every droplet and count all the droplets that are in that spray. So some of the real world examples that I've got with Droplex, and I'm not going to disclose the golf course that this was done at, but when I was in sales, I was driving around, I had a gallon of Droplex in my truck, and I was trying to get people to use it. I know how great of a product this is. I know how many acres it's being sprayed on across the US on farmland. If farmers are using this product, you know it works because they're not just going to throw away money. So I've got my gallon. I go to a golf course that has 2 fairway spray rigs. Perfect. And they're out spraying the day that I show up to go with and show them Droplex. So I asked the superintendent, can we put Droplex in one of the tanks and then go and compare and contrast the two as they're out spraying on the fairways? We go and we follow the rig that's out on the fairways without any Droplex. And then you see the mist. You can see little droplets floating away. It's not even very windy, but the little droplets are floating away. And it becomes even more evident that these are small droplets that can cause off-target injury potentially when the driver of the rig does his teardrop turn at the end of the pass. He shuts off the booms, does his turn, and there's still like a cloud of mist that he has to drive through because there was no Droplex in the spray. Then we go and we follow the rig that did have the Droplex, and you can see instantly everything sitting down into the turf. There's not all these little droplets floating away. And he does his turn, and there's no cloud of mist that he has to drive through when he goes back to do the next pass. It bothers me, and the reason I'm not going to say the course name is because the guy never ended up buying any. I was like, you saw it with your own eyes, and you didn't buy any.
You didn't buy the product? And you know what?
It's not a fault of mine. I'm not a very great sales rep because I didn't get to close that sale after seeing the evidence, but it's just a great story that I like to share. And it's one of those things you can see instantly when you use Droplex compared to when you aren't using it.
Well, and I think I had similar successes where we have so much of our business that is lawn care and lawn care applicators, and many times we're spraying non-selective and selective herbicides. So off-site contamination, damage to trees and shrubs and flowers and all the other things that are in people's landscapes is something that these applicators don't want to have happen because it may be a liability. They may be replacing plant material if we continually kill things. So I found that once I show people how much it reduces those fines and that off-site drift that you see when you're making applications, especially with smaller, finer nozzles. We have a lot of our lawn care applicators that utilize the little ride-on sprayers that have very, very fine nozzles on them. And by reducing that, we reduce the liability. And it also is a good selling point to the customer that they're working with going, hey, I'm doing as much as I can to try to limit the overall damage, potential damage to your landscape. And I think I found that once you start to get those people to utilize that product, and you know, it's a different product to try to get into the market, but they see the overall benefits and advantages.
One of the other things that we've discussed in the past, Rob, is that after the treatment, you can see the effects of a drift control product like Droplex and how good it is at getting exactly where you want to spray it. If you're going out with a bare ground treatment and you want to spray, you know, non-selectives, or if you have a snow mold application and you use Droplex, maybe you miss a part of the fairway or the tee box or the green where you want to spray that snow mold. You come back the next season and you look, and there's a very clear defined line of where the spray was put down because you were using Droplex. It's not all over the place, and you're not having skips either.
Well, and we discussed yesterday when we were talking about when we start to look at, especially like snow mold, you know, and we look at some of the programs that are out there from our main manufacturers, they're very expensive cost per acre. So we don't want to have a bunch of lost material when we're spraying a program potentially for gray snow mold that's costing us $400 or $500 an acre. We don't want to lose, you know, even 10,000 square feet. That seems like a lot to a lot of people, but when you look at a golf course that's say 80 acres of you know treated area for snow mold, it's only a quarter of an acre. So it's a very, very small fraction of the overall applications, but it also is a couple $100. So we compound that over those large applications. We want to put the material where we want to treat, and we want to limit the loss of material. So that's something that we also get a benefit out of Droplex.
The other claim that we have with Droplex is deposition agent, and this may not be a big thing on turf because we got such a small canopy, but when you're talking about ornamentals, bushes, trees, shrubs, you know, putting insecticides, fungicides into the canopy of the tree, having this really ideal sized droplet to reduce drift and move into the canopy is great for getting better coverage overall on the foliage in your trees and your bushes.
Exactly. So give me 2 shakes here, Kevin. Sorry. I couldn't get her to leave me alone. Go outside. One of the things with our Ask Tangent, you'll notice that both Kevin and I do our tapings from our houses. So
we both got dogs, and they're both a pain in the butt sometimes.
They're both dogs. They don't give up. So we just let the dog outside, even though it's like 10 out. So sorry about that, everyone. But no, I think that's a good point. So next product we want to talk about, I think we want to talk a little bit about water conditioners.
Yeah, what are your thoughts with water conditioners, Rob? You've had a lot of experience with some of these.
And so a little history. I'm based out of Colorado. I've done a lot of work extensively, both vegetation management, landscape, lawn care in the Western United States. And traditionally, we have very, very poor water quality. So when I say that, the first thing we're going to look at is the dissolved cation. So magnesium, manganese, calcium, specifically sodium, potassium, they're all in our water, and they're all positively charged cations. So they affect the overall performance. In a lot of cases, they'll bind up some of the active ingredient that we have in our spray solution, making it ineffective. So water conditioners are utilized to help keep the active ingredients in a form that is able to be utilized and do what it's told to do. So I'm really a big fan. The majority of water conditioners that we have are ammonium sulfate based. And you know, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in southern Wisconsin, and whenever we mixed up tanks, we were in an area, Karst limestone area in southern Wisconsin, had a lot of calcium in our water. But we always kept soluble ammonium sulfate in the barn to mix our spray solutions up with. So that's something that I've always done, and in a smaller scale that we're working with when we get outside of agriculture. A lot of the products we use our product is Breeze, and it's an ammonium sulfate based non-ionic surfactant. So it's got a couple of benefits in the jug, and it's an easy way to measure when you're mixing, you know, hundreds and hundreds of gallons of tanks for agriculture. You use the soluble stuff. It was common, and we kept it around by the pallet at the farm. But in our industry, we use a little more sophisticated soluble ammonium sulfate form. It's already been put into solution, and they add some other things to the tank to really maximize the performance of those water conditioners.
So one of the most common examples of when to use a water conditioner is glyphosate. It's going to tie up with all those hard water cations, and your spray is not going to be as effective because you're going out with, you know, a percentage of what your initial glyphosate rate was. And so this water conditioner and our next topic, pH, they both kind of have similar results if you're not measuring and correcting the issue up front. So if you mix up some glyphosate and you have hard water, your applicator goes and sprays, and you're maybe getting 50, 60, 70% control. And then you think the problem is that the herbicide didn't work, when in reality, it didn't work because your water wasn't corrected. So adding some water conditioner or ammonium sulfate is really going to fix the problem and make your spray work better in the long run. So knowing what your hard water, or if you have hard water, and how to correct it is going to really benefit your program in the future. And you're not going to be just wasting money by going and making an application and then thinking it's that you either didn't use enough or that the product didn't work. So now you're just wasting more product by going out and using different or more use rate than you should be.
Well, and I think that's something that I experienced, especially on the western side of the state when I first started as a salesman. I had, we were using 2 or 3 different types of glyphosate in the market. We had our proprietary Cornerstone. We were using some Ranger Pro, some of the Roundup Custom a lot of times specifically. And guys would go, it didn't work. I think I got some bad product. I'm like, no, you didn't get bad product. You didn't address the issue with your water quality of your spray solution. And once you got guys to really look at that and understand what they were trying to accomplish, they got better performance. And one of the things that we experience in our industry a lot is that we don't want to go and do stuff twice. It's callbacks are a big problem for lawn care companies. You don't want to go and spray twice. You're starting to become not very profitable. So you want to do the job correctly the first time. So by adding something that really doesn't cost much relative to the labor and all the other time and energy and effort put into a spray application, adding a water conditioner was actually a very cheap thing to do. And initially, everybody's like, well, what's my spray solution going to cost? I'm like, well, it's going to cost this, but also think about the labor, the time, and if you get a call back. So using the water conditioners allowed people to be able to do a good job the first time and give the customer that they're working for the level of control that they want.
Same thing goes with pH and
Absolutely.
Having issues in your carrier water with pH. If your carrier water pH is too high to start with and you start mixing up products in your tank, and a lot of the turf products don't have too many issues with high pH carrier water, but specifically products like Dilox, maybe Carfentrazone or Iprodione, they can start to really, their half-life is going to be so small when you start putting stuff in the tank. If your pH is too high, right, you might have a couple hours to go out and make your application. And Rob, you had a good analogy with this yesterday.
It's interesting you mentioned Dilox. We have part of our surfactant presentation that we give for CEC credits. An example with Dilox, where at a pH of 6, Dilox is stable in the tank for 4 days. We moved to a pH of 7. Remember, pH is a measure of the hydrogen ion concentration, and it's a logarithmic function. So when we go from a pH to 6 to 7, it's more than just moving 1 unit. So we go to a pH of 7. Now that Dilox is stable in the tank for about 4 hours. So that's not very long, especially if you have a route sheet and you have your applicator out there. He's got some grub breakthrough, so he's going from lawn to lawn of your properties you're working with and doing treatments. You got about half a day and it's already broken down 50%. Well, 50%, I always tell people that 50% may be below the threshold where we have control. So we're essentially not getting any control. Now we move to a pH of 8 and we have 1 hour. And, like I mentioned, you think about that. The guys fill the tank at the shop. They didn't address the pH issue of the spray solution. So they have a high pH. Maybe they're using municipal water. And they don't even get out of the shop and they've already started to break down half of their material. So they're not going to be effective. They're going to go around and do that route and you're going to get callbacks because the customers that ask for that curative grub application are still seeing grub activity because we had the material breaking down in the tank. Now, something to consider, especially in today as we start to tighten up our water usage and our industry is always under the microscope of the public, is one, the way that they treat municipal water. The majority of municipal water throughout the country, and I've measured it in Colorado Springs when I lived there, Denver, all over the place, out west, and it's always at a pH of, high 7s to to mid 8s. Right now, the pH of water in Denver, for some other factors, is about 8.4, and that's where the water department has decided to set the pH after the water treatment process. The other thing that we have going on is we have a lot of non-potable water being utilized. So if you're at a golf course that's using non-potable water, it's going to tend to be at a higher pH. It's going to tend to have those cations dissolved in it because it's not, completely purified. Again, we're trying to utilize water. So if they're pulling off the main line and they have non-potable water to fill their spray tanks, they really need to look at and address the fact of the water quality so that they get better overall product performance. And it's something issue. It's huge. It's a huge issue. So, and it's just, we have high pH water in many parts of the country. So something that needs to be looked at. What do you think? It's like maybe $125, $150 for a nice little digital pH meter these days. Yeah. You can buy them online. Probably buy one on Amazon if we needed to. And checking the water pH as you mix your tanks is going to give you better overall performance. And then utilizing the right water conditioners and adjusting the pH and getting it into a range is going to really improve your overall performance. The other thing to think about is the fact that we look at the products we're utilizing. Notice how many of the products, when you look at the active ingredient, are the acid form. So if you put an acid in a basic liquid, a basic water solution, you get alkaline hydrolysis and you get product breakdown, neutralization.
The other thing to consider with pH is you don't want to have products sitting in your tank overnight.
No.
It sounds like a good idea because you get out quick in the morning, but knowing what your pH is and how the chemistry is affected by certain pHs is really just going to benefit your program in the long run.
I run into that all the time, and I always question customers when I ask, hey, I didn't get the performance I wanted, or I did on the first half of my properties, and then on the next half, I didn't get any control. Did you mix it up? Did the tank sit? Did you address the pH, the water quality issues? And a lot of times the answer is no. So I always try to tell people to mix up what they're going to spray. And again, with glyphosate, you have a lot of these lawn care companies that they have a backpack. Their mow guys have a backpack mixed up to spot spray cracks and weeds that they see as they're out on the properties. And when they're doing that, they might mix it up and have it back. Maybe they use it real fast one day. Maybe they don't use it for 3 or 4 days. But they're not getting the control that they're looking, and their customers are unhappy because what they're telling them they're doing and what applications they're making, they're not getting the necessary control that the customer's looking for.
Right. The next two utility adjuvants to discuss are kind of more of perception based to the homeowner, to the end user: PreFlight and PostFlight. PreFlight is an odor masking agent that has some anti-foam in there. It's mostly an odor masking agent to mask harsh smelling chemicals, herbicides, insecticides, etc. And it smells like wintergreen. So it's a great product to go out, especially if you're a lawn care company and you deal with customers or customers that have neighbors who are always going to complain about those 2,4-D smells or acephate or whatever you're spraying.
Erythroids, insecticides are common that have a lot of these products are emulsifiable concentrates. So they're using some level of petroleum distillate, some organic solvents to put the products into solution. So in many cases, it's not the actual active ingredient that we're smelling, but it's the inert ingredients that were utilized to make that formulation.
Something like PreFlight, really easy fix, very inexpensive to go out and put this in your tank and just gain the benefits of, the perception. And then the other piece to this is making your equipment look good. We've got a product called PostFlight. You can treat the outside for stains and pigments. You can treat the inside for pigment stains, as well as, kind of breaking down any pesticides that might still be in there and making it more neutral in your tank so that you don't have that residue when you go out and make your next application. So PostFlight, great product. And we're going to have some pictures of this, maybe even some videos of PostFlight. It works really well on all surfaces of your equipment. And, we've both seen the results of this product.
Well, and in a lot of cases, another thing, you mentioned the pigments and some of the colorants that are being utilized, and even just spray dye indicator. We also have many of the common pre-emergents for the lawn care application market are yellow or orange. They're all part of a chemical family that have a color to them. There are a few clear ones. The most common ones tend to have a yellow or orange color. So when guys are making repetitive applications in the springs, a lot of times you'll go to the shop or you'll see them out and about, and the tops of the tank have a little bit of a yellow tinge to them because of filling and everything. So we can clean that up with PostFlight. I think it's important for our industry to have good, clean, professional looking equipment so that we give that, again, that public perception that we're doing, we're being good environmental stewards, and we're doing as much as possible to not overly utilize these products and contaminate the environment and the municipalities we're working around.
Well, it makes your employees feel better too about the equipment that they're using.
Oh, got to be clean. You got to be neat. We're under the microscope. That's just simple for our industry.
Yep. And the last product that we've got to discuss is FoamForce. Rob, you had a really great story about anti-foams in general, but FoamForce specifically.
Well, you know, it's interesting because, and again, because Kevin and I have been in the industry a long time, we sometimes take stuff for granted. And I had a good customer call me this summer, and he said he had a new employee. And he said that the new employee said, hey, where I used to work, which was another customer of ours, coincidentally, they were using a defoamer. And so Jake's like, you got a defoamer? I'm like, oh, absolutely. So I sent some out in the next order. And Jake called me up and he's like, you know, I've known you for like 15 years. And maybe you could have mentioned that there was such a product that was going to, you know, cut my fill time in half. So again, because it's gotten so expensive with labor, everybody's looking at the cost and the economics. And if it takes your spray tech twice as long to fill the tank because he's filling, he's letting the foam settle out, he's filling it again, he's letting the foam settle out. Well, we can just use FoamForce to break that down, and FoamForce can be utilized curatively. If we build up a little foam, maybe we have some new products in the tank or a new combination. We didn't think we were going to have any foam, but this tank mix we do. A lot of our guys fill off of fire hydrants and some high pressure water sources. So utilizing it, I like preventatively. It doesn't take much. You know, our label for FoamForce says an ounce per 100 gallons. So you got a 300-400 gallon tank, 3-4 ounces. But preventatively, you just won't develop that foam, so your guys can fill and mix quicker and more efficiently and get back out onto the job. So it was just interesting that it was something that I take for granted, and I didn't recommend to a customer that I've known for a very long period of time. But it was one of those things that we want to make people aware of, because there are ways to get around to the foaming aspect of many of the products that we have.
FoamForce is quick. It's really going to show the results, you know, immediately when you start to spray some of this in your tank, and you'll get that immediate knockdown.
It's almost and the same thing with mixing small tanks. You know, you're mixing backpacks, or if you have a tank, we have a lot of guys that break down solubles, so they design their spray equipment to have a lot of agitation. A lot of agitation does what? Makes a lot of foam. So if you have those types of situations, utilizing a product like this effectively speeds up the process and get you guys back out on the job quicker and more efficiently.
So I think the theme here with utility adjuvants, and again, all surfactants are adjuvants, but not all adjuvants are surfactants, right? So Rob brought up the NIS, the organosilicones, you know, some of these surfactants to help spread and penetrate into the foliage.
Sure.
These utility adjuvants, drift, deposition, anti-foam, cleaners, you know, some of the dye products that we use.
Right.
The theme here is that they're not going to directly affect the pesticide, but they are going to save you time, money. There's a lot of benefits that we didn't mention also that I would be interested to hear from a lot of our listeners too, if they have any.
Yeah, and that brings back to what we talked about earlier, where if they can always utilize the e-com site to send us questions, to ask questions, to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it and the issues you're having, because it may be as simple as something that you add an ounce per 100, which in our industry seems like nothing, but will substantially improve the overall performance and efficiency of the application.
Definitely. That was utility adjuvants. in a
Yep.
30-minute nutshell. So
and I think they're part of the industry that's overlooked. I mean, it's something that's kind of like, oh yeah, we have those. Everybody has those, but why do we have them, and how should they be used? And I hope that we hit those topics today.
Hopefully we cleared it up for you. So reach out to us if you have any thoughts or questions. We'd love to hear your stories as well. And, be sure to look out for Mass Tangent in 2023. We're excited to continue this podcast.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone.